If you followed your heart, what kind of life would you create for yourself? What work would you do? What kind of people you would help? And how would you spend your time with your family and your loved ones? In this fascinating episode, we get a glimpse into the life of Charles Elwood, an early member of our Power BI consultant program and now a Microsoft MVP. We get a glimpse into what is possible if you follow your heart. This is part 3 of a series, A Journey of a Power BI Pro. To learn more about creating your own path to freedom, please visit learnpowerbi.com/pro. Link is also in the show notes. And you will also find the link to connect with Charles Elwood. Enjoy and power on. Welcome to the Power On Show, where we talk Power BI and beyond. Sometimes way beyond. But our goal is always to help you create a successful Power BI career and a life of freedom. I'm your host, Avi Singh. All right, folks, here we are with the incredible Charles Elwood. Now, Charles, you and I haven't talked in a bit, but I know a lot is going on, so I'm really looking forward to catch up. How are you doing this morning? Actually, it's not quite morning for you, is it?
Yeah, it's 1 o'clock. And we're gonna talk about the freedom part of it. But yeah, I just went for a run. I texted you. I was like, Avi, I'm going for a run, and
Oh, I love
went
it.
for a run. It's sunny, beautiful. Love it. Love getting outdoors and having the freedom to manage your time.
That's beautiful. I can't wait to get into all that. But let's talk about work. Now, I'll say that for a large part of my life, work wasn't my favorite topic to talk about. Like, oh, come on, like I just like to talk about anything else but work. But that's one of the shifts that you and I have both experienced. That instead of something you dread, instead of the Monday blues, man, it becomes a part of you and it fuels you as much as anything else. So I know you started with Power BI within your company, and you started consulting with around Power BI. But man, you have moved from there and evolved and grown so much, and it's been incredible to kind of watch that from the sidelines. And I know you got the Microsoft MVP certification, and you have delved really into AI. Tell me, what is kind of the focus of your work right now? Is it Power BI, AI, a mix? Yeah, tell me, what's the kind of work you find yourself doing when you're helping your clients these days?
Yeah, that's a great question. So going back a little bit, you're right,
Mhm.
Power BI, and then I was going for the AI or the MVP award in Power BI, but I was doing so much work in AI and at the time on IoT or AI on the edge on the device that I got kind of by accident the AI MVP award.
Oh, I wouldn't say it was an accident. And I know about some of the work you were doing, and I know
Yeah,
how impressed they were. And I remember your story where people around you started talking about, like, how come you're not an MVP, right? Isn't that
yeah,
true? Right? Yeah. So
yeah,
yeah, and that's
yeah. It was
incredible.
my friend at Microsoft, Amira. She was like, How are you not an MVP already?" She's like, "You're talking about this stuff. You're doing this stuff." So
Yeah.
she nominated me, and that's kind of how I got in there. And then this was 6 months before this past December when OpenAI and Microsoft and Azure and everything just kind of merged into one, and everything blew up. And
Yeah.
then I you know my story. I started really like following my heart, and that's where the freedom comes in. Is I saw AI as a really powerful tool in terms of helping people who have impairments in communication. And I
Mm,
started working with the teenager in Puerto Rico who was nonverbal, and using AI so that she could sign in her way,
yeah.
and she could speak to the world with, I was going to give her mother's voice to her. And then I worked with a
Wow.
gentleman here in Holland, in Michigan, who had throat cancer, and he lost his voice to throat cancer. And we took VHS tapes of all things. We actually found a VHS tape from 2004, and I extracted the audio from that, and I gave him his voice back. He has an app now where
Yeah.
he types words into it, and
Yeah.
then his voice recovered from the
Wow.
VHS tape. So
So
yeah, it's
yeah,
a life of
man,
freedom.
man, that's incredible. It's like freedom to do the work that you love, freedom to do the work that you believe in. But for the speech part, I've heard it from you, and it's so incredible. But I'm just gonna say it back just to make sure I understand it. So let's say I was it either lost my voice or I was about to lose my voice. You can go back to maybe my old YouTube recordings, and you can program it through AI so that then if I've lost my voice, I can speak through an app, but it'll be my voice. It wouldn't be the
Yeah,
Stephen Hawking robotic weird voice that we have come to associate with somebody. It'll sound like me. Man,
yeah,
that's
and
truly
it's
incredible.
incredible, and I did it with my voice. I made a neural version of my voice, and I played it for my wife, and I
Yeah.
remember she listened to it, and she looked at me, and she's like, "Why would you do this?"
Oh my god, the
I was like,
pranks you can play with that. I didn't think about that possibility.
"Yeah, yeah."
Oh, that's
She's like, "This
hilarious.
is like, what
Yeah.
is this?" And she's like, "I'm
You,
not
you,
comfortable,"
you know
but
what we need,
but
Charles? We need to get you a life size cutout of you, and then have some fun. Put speakers behind it. Oh God! All right, all right, all right. Control yourselves, guys. All right. So, what I'm thinking though is sometimes there's this line that I like, which is like you're in one thing as you're in another. And in Power BI, I'm always kind of for the underdog, kind of the business user. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm not sure I can do this. This is a tech world. I'm like, no, no, you can. I'll help you, right? And I've started to hike, and guess the kind of people that I'm encouraging to hike. It's the non-hiker, right? So here I'm helping the non-techie with the tech, and there I'm like, no, 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 you can do it. And I was like, no, I'm not sure. I'm like, no, I'll go with you, right? But I wonder if if you see a parallel, like what you were trying to do with Power BI, the way you're trying to work, the way you're trying to help your client, the kind of clients you were working with or enjoyed working with, and the work that you're doing with AI. So on surface, it seems very different. It seems like almost a 180, right? So, oh, you're doing this and now you're doing that. But I wonder if there's a common thread that links the two.
absolutely. So when I was doing Power BI, there are a couple projects I loved. I worked with Kids Food Basket with a Power BI project to get food to children that had food insecurity, right? And that was close to my heart. I was like, this is what I want to do for the children of the world is give them the food and take that pain away from them. And I remember I worked with some professors at Hope College doing wastewater analysis of COVID during, with Power
Mm,
BI. And so I wanted to help the people and really add value and impact to society. And that's what I discovered with AI too, is it's so powerful in that you can pick and choose who you help.
yeah,
And it freed me up to take on the customers that were closest to my heart. Yeah, so
yeah.
that's the freedom I
Oh,
think I discovered afterwards is that I coveted so much is to help the people I wanted to help that needed it the most.
wow, man, that's incredible. So I'm trying to contrast it with the life that maybe you lived. I know that was certainly my life, where they talk about the cog in the giant machine, right? So I was working in Microsoft, and even before that, I was in one of the other large company. And man, I remember so sometimes I think about the things that I don't miss. Like, I do miss there was some interactions, some great colleagues I work with, so I feel lucky about that. But there are some things I don't miss. And one of them is that annual performance review. I mean, it's yeah, it's just never made sense. But there were some tragic parts where I remember I would go through the year and I knew I had worked really, really hard, but at the end, it almost felt like I was trying to make up stuff for the performance review? But going from that to now where your impact, like there's no doubt, and you see it like it's so tangible and so immediate. What has that meant for you? How's that feel different from the corporate life?
It's an adjustment for sure. You kind of recalibrate your value, like what success means. Like before, like you said,
Mm,
performance metric, meeting these
yeah.
goals that somebody else set up for you. But now it's, you kind of like, for example, I got picked to do a TEDx Makatawa presentation, and there was a large group that submitted, and
Oh,
I got,
that's exciting.
and it's, yeah, it's this story, and they picked it because of the impact it had to society, for society, right? And just that feeling that you got chosen to tell your story about how you're impacting other people's lives, and just Avi, like you and I have talked about, my kids, they were like, Dad, and they told me, they're like, we're so proud of you, like
Yeah.
TEDx. Like, I
Wow.
can tell my friends that you're giving a voice to people who have lost your voice. Like, that means the
Dude,
world to me.
you're gonna be like, I don't know any other TEDx speakers. I mean, obviously, I watched a lot of TED Talks. I'm a fan of TED and TEDx talks, but that is incredible. You should definitely be really proud. So, is that coming up?
Yeah, that's in 3 weeks, I think. So yeah, it's coming up
Really
here,
exciting.
and
Really
it's,
exciting.
yeah, the pride, when your kids say, "Hey, Dad, I'm proud of you," like, that's the performance review I'm going for, like.
Oh, love it. What a beautiful thing to say. Yeah. And, you probably heard me say this, right? I mean, kids, I feel, boy, I mean, they don't listen to you. Certainly once they hit teenage, they don't listen to you. Man, they see you. So I remember when I was like, no, 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 I can't leave my job in Microsoft because I got to support my kids and all that. But I'm like, what kind of role model am I being? How am
Yeah.
I ever going to inspire them or tell them to pursue their dreams if I'm not doing that myself? So yeah, man. I mean, I think we're all proud of you, and yeah, that is pretty amazing. So I want to dig a little bit deeper into the work, and some of it is valuable, but it's kind of obvious on the surface, which is that yeah, you help somebody and you build a dashboard for them and you show to them and they go whoa, right? And boy, you recreate somebody's voice and the reaction that you get. I'm sure it's pretty amazing. But are there other moments in your work where maybe there's not even anybody around? Maybe you're just trying to kind of figure something out and you're kind of lost in a zone, or you struggling with a problem and it's maybe frustrating, but then you solve it. Tell me about the joy in the work that you kind of experience from day to day.
Well, it's been incredible. I think I've been thinking a lot about this, and it's the persistence, the resilience, and it's me sitting for hours in front of a screen. Like, for example, this voice, I had to spend hours watching that VHS tape, saying, "Okay, this chunk of audio I want to take out," and it was hours and hours and hours. And as I got closer to making it successful,
Mhm.
I got more excited, and I was like, "Man, this is awful lot of hours, and this may fail. This may never work."
Wow.
But to get to that point and to see when it's almost there, that
Yeah.
excitement is like, there's no other feeling like it. I was like, I just want to recreate that over and over. And I think you and I have talked about it, like Power BI, that the agile part of it,
Hmm.
like, you don't know what you're going to discover, but after you've
Yeah.
done it a while, it's like, I'm going to write this DAX. And when I throw it out there, this pattern might emerge. And when you get close and you start seeing those patterns, you're like, the
Yeah.
value is here, the impact is right around the corner, and just to see that in your customers' eyes when you show them that dashboard and they're like,
Yeah.
this will change my whole company. But yeah, I have those moments all the time now, and it's like, you crave that, right? And I know people
Yeah.
in our audience are gonna resonate with it, because that's what we strive for, is that working through that
Yeah.
hard problem just to get that value right on the other side
Yeah.
that we don't know what it quite is yet.
Oh, that's beautiful. So I think there is there's a meta level to it, right? There is a spiritual aspect to it, and I think the spiritual aspect is I think we do get intuitively, like when we are working aligned, we know how that feels, right? You feel lit up, and yeah, it's just your life, right? We know, in fact, words kind of fail in this world, right? So we know all that. But I think the scientists trying to catch up. So they study this phenomena, which they call flow, and the simplest way to describe it is when you feel your best and perform your best. But I mean, when I heard that, I'm like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. But yeah, so we have kind of experienced it, and I think scientists are trying to catch up. But yeah, that's incredible that we have that in our lives. You said something which caught my attention, which is that you're doing something, you're spending hours at it, and you don't even know if you're going to succeed. And I want to tease on that a little bit because I work, of course, I kind of train and coach others around Power BI, around leaving the 9 to 5, And a lot of times that fear of failure is there. And again, I mean, I always say courage isn't the absence of fear, it's taking action in spite of fear. But I know that sometimes that fear can be limiting. But has that been a perspective you've kind of always had? They're like, hey, it might fail, but I'm going to do it. Yeah, yeah. Or have you kind of nurtured it over time? Have you experienced that more in your recent years since leaving a 9 to 5 job? Tell me about that part.
I think I remember. So this goes back to when I first met you, Avi. I remember somebody asking me what it's like to start your own business, and I was like, well, it's kind of like waking up, picking your worst top three fears, and then punching them in the face, right? I mean, it's like that every day, and after a while, you go through that, and you're like, wow, like look at how far I've come in a year, facing all my fears, and you just learn that just on the other side of fear sometimes is great learning, great impact, great, fulfillment. And you're like, wow, I wish I'd done this 10 years ago. That's, that that's kind of like how I think about it now is, like
Yeah.
facing these fears has made me grown so much in
Oh,
the last 4 years,
oh
and it
man.
all kind of started when I met you and I started this journey in my own business and Power BI and learning. And yeah, it's been so much fun. But fear is always there. It's still here with me today.
Yeah.
But I know I just want to get to the other side of it.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, don't let it stop you. That's incredible. I'll share something quick that Grace Tia shared when I was having this conversation with her, and she talked about how in Chinese there are two words for regret. I didn't know that. Right? So two different words for regret. One is for regret for the things you did, and another is regret for the things you didn't do. And she said, I want less of that, right? Because it's so hard to regret the things you didn't do. It's like, oh man, I should have taken that chance. What if you did do something and again, it was like what your heart was calling you to, then you can always say that, man. I mean, I gave it my best, right? So yeah, that's beautiful. That's lovely. So tell me, let's switch over. I want to hear more about the clients that you help. So start with the kind of the Power BI work, and then we'll talk about the AI and the voice thing. So Power BI, tell me a bit more. You did mention some of the clients. Maybe tell me about other clients. So pick one of your favorite stories. Like, what were these engagements like, and what was the impact, and so forth. Yeah, tell me a bit about that.
I'm gonna go back. Um, I'm gonna go back a little bit because I worked with some large data sets, and um, they were large data dumps. And I remember looking at them, and I remember going through your lessons, and this is kind of fun because I remember seeing, the large, if you just take that data dump and you throw it into Power BI and you auto detect the relationships, right? You get this like huge network snowflake diagram, and you're like, oh, what is this, and I remember the client was like, this is super slow, I can't get this to do anything,
Mm.
and I was like, all right, let me work with this. And I just kept thinking star schema, and simplify just to the tables and the fields you need. And I built the star schema, I built the lookup tables, I built that main table, and the data table in the middle. And I remember, I it looks so simple, right? I was like, there's like 3 or 4 lookup tables pointing to a big data table. I was like, I don't know, like this is it, right? But then, I had not been through it through the customer's eyes, right? Through their lens. So I went in, I was like, here's the report, and here's kind of the back end, here's what the star schema looks like. And I remember clicking through some of the filters, and that right, we talk about this, that jaw-dropping moment, like, because I'd click the filter and boom, like, auto filtering, and it was immediate. And that star schema, that sound data model changed everything. I mean, it looks so simple, but
Yeah.
it changed everything. It was so beautiful how fast it was. And I still remember that one moment, and it was very early in when I started my Power BI, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like the amount of value I can provide somebody, and that moment when you show them and you see through their eyes all the pain that
Yeah.
they've gone through and what you've just solved for them.
Yeah.
So I still remember that. Those are the beautiful
Yeah.
moments for me.
Oh man, that's incredible. And yeah, I mean, I always say, right? I mean, I know it's okay to learn more, right? But I think when we make the connection that, oh, I don't know enough and I'm not good enough yet, and when I know enough, then then and only then can I help others. It's just a silly notion, right? Because it's there's no finish line to that. I always say, hey, if you know some and count rows and some basics, right? I mean, if you've gone through my 60-minute tutorial, data table, lookup table, man, there are millions of businesses you can help and get paid for it. And yeah, make an impact for them. Man, what a beautiful story. What a beautiful story. So tell me about the AI work. So what would you call this? Like voice recreation? You're
Yeah,
recreating
that's
the
part
voice
of
in
my
AI?
work. Yeah, and then I do a
Okay.
lot of OpenAI and ChatGPT help
Hmm.
for companies that are integrating it.
Yeah.
And I want to tie it to Power BI. So let me tie because Power
Actually, I
BI
was
works.
curious about the connection. I was like, is it two different worlds? Is it an overlap? Tell me a bit about that.
So I started with Power BI, and I was like, oh, we're just looking for patterns in the data. That's a lot of it. And we do the human learning before machine learning that you had taught us about, right? You're looking for the logic of how to clean the data and how the logic forms, and then you create the schema to kind of extract the patterns for us to visually see the patterns. And then I got to introduce to artificial intelligence on the edge, which to me was just an extension of Power BI, because Power
Mhm.
BI to me, I saw so much data was dirty, right? And we have to go through that cleaning process. But to me, you could train a brain and put it at the data collection point to clean the data. So that's what AI on the edge meant to me. So it was just an extension of the patterns I was seeing in Power BI. So I was like, wow, you
Mhm.
can now train a brain to find the patterns and clean it and just collect the useful information and send it to me. And then I'll plot this on Power BI. So that's what led to AI on the edge. But then I got introduced to, like OpenAI and multimodal inputs. And all that really meant was you're looking for patterns in speech, in vision, in images, in text, in language. So it was an extension of data and visualization, but kind of the abstraction was in the pattern recognition. You can now train like a mathematical model to see those patterns, right? So that's how I went from Power BI to AI, and it's really just an extension. It was a path into this that moved me
Yeah.
there. So
Oh, that's great. It's reminding me of the phrase that I've heard, like Power BI is the gateway drug to BI. It opens
yeah,
so many doors. Great place to start. I suppose. Uh, that's great. So um let's switch gears and talk about this. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are people who are doing work around Power BI and AI inside a company. And of course, you and I both kind of experienced that. That was our life. But we left it behind. And you talked about the decision, like how does it feel like? Well, yeah, facing your worst three fears every morning. But how has that turned out? What do you feel has that given you? How is your life different now that maybe you value a lot more? What value is there in this new life that you see?
yeah, and so I think about that all the time. I people ask, would I ever go back? And
Mhm.
it's an emphatic never. I would never go back.
I don't
And
think we're capable of it. Like, imagine, the thing is, we're gonna be like our manager's worst nightmare. Whoever we're reporting to, like, oh god, yeah, we'll be the troublemakers, man. Yeah, troublemakers.
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, it's not gonna work. All right, cool,
yeah,
cool, cool. Tell me more.
never go back because it's the ultimate freedom. It's the freedom to, I remember this is the story. Is I remember one of the reasons I left, I remember being able to, well, my son had a doctor's appointment and I couldn't go, and it was important for me to go. And I was like, I'm not making my own decisions. I don't have freedom with my time to choose what I do with my time. And time's one of those crazy things that once it's gone, you can never get it back, right? So it's time with my kids during this time, when they're at home, they're about to go to college, right? So I was like, I need this time. I need to own this time. I need to have freedom to choose what I do with my time. And like Grace said, I don't want to ever regret, in the future, not spending time with my kids or choosing that, right? So what all of this, journey has given me is time to choose who I work with, what projects I work on, who I help, who
Mm.
I turn down. If one doesn't meet my values, I say, I'm sorry, but this doesn't work with, my values. And I get to, like, I get to go for a run like I did earlier. I get to take my kids to, I play games, I take them fishing, I go, take them in a canoe,
You
whatever.
build boats together, right?
Yeah, yeah. I built, there's a canoe that I built. Yeah.
And there's
Geodesic airlight.
3D printing going on and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, we learned 3D printing together. We built a cornhole and we were playing yesterday. My youngest son and I go play. The freedom I have now to do what I want, and importantly too, to make my own mistakes. I remember my boss, before I left the last job I was at. It's like, Charles, he told me, you're going to make your own mistakes now, and I can't help you anymore. And I remember thinking in the back of my head, it's like, yes, I get to make my own mistakes.
Oh,
I want to write my own story. Yeah, that is so important. Yeah.
oh man, that's incredible. That's incredible. I'll share a quick story. You may have heard it before, but after I left Microsoft, I did this free workshop in a library. The library, you could get the room for free. So I was just starting out. I'm like, yeah, dude. So I did a free workshop and I tried to promote on LinkedIn. Didn't really get that much attention. And I think like 15 people signed up. And man, I went to Costco and I bought like snacks and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, cool. There were 15 people in the room. I was so clueless, man. If 15 people sign up for your event and for a free event, you don't know who's showing up. So one person showed up. I was so heartbroken. And I went crying to my one of my friends and I was like, oh, boo-hoo, right, this didn't work. And he said, Avi, man, what are you complaining about? Dude, you're the king of the world, right? You can do whatever you want. This didn't work, try something else. So I thought to myself, yeah, this in-person thing didn't work. Let me try online. And as they say, man, the rest is history, right? So yeah, and I love that story where you said, yes, I get to make my own mistakes. And man, what a spirit. Really, really amazing. Um, you have mentioned this word a few times, and I want to hear more about that. You mentioned about values. And frankly, it's commendable where you said that, saying no to a client where your values don't match. And I sometimes struggle with that a little bit, right? But I've had to train myself for one, not thinking of it as a no. And the phrase that I use is that by saying no to what you don't want or what doesn't align with you, you're saying yes to more of what you do want and what does align with you. But like what do you mean when you say your values? Is it something thought out? Is it something that's written out? Like this word gets thrown around a bit, but often what does that mean for you?
It's taken a lot of thought to figure out what my values are. I think because the corporate world, they tell you what you should do, and I was like, now that I'm on my own, I got to figure out what I want to do. And it's to give back in the community. I serve on, I think it's 4 different boards, in nonprofits in town. I help people with disabilities, and I give back and to the community to try to make a huge difference in somebody's life. And a lot of times, like you said, not necessarily the underdog, but just, what I find is people, they talk about scale a lot, and they're like,
Mm,
well, we'll only invest in your company if you can scale this thing, or if you can take it and help millions of people, right? But I was like, yeah, but what about that one person who has that custom, that if you can build something custom for them and it changes their life immensely, if the value to
yeah,
that one person is there,
yeah.
you know, why not do that? And so it's decisions like that I can now make because they align with what I want to do with my time, is like change somebody's life completely and do something that's never been done before.
Yeah.
and be persistent and solve that problem. So yeah,
Yeah.
those are kind of the things I've had to think a lot about. Is and when you start your own journey, I think one
Mhm.
of the things is everybody tells you how you should take that journey, but you gotta kind of just like say, okay, I'm gonna take this my own way, make my own
Yeah.
mistakes. Kind of the same, you know, you're gonna make your own mistakes. Yes, I want to make my own mistakes.
Wow. Man, I think we could just talk for hours on that, but but that definitely resonated with me because I think there's this obsession with scale and growth, and I'm not really sure where it comes from. And I don't know if you've experienced that, right? But I think a lot of it for me, leaving the 9 to 5, has been deprogramming, which is funny because that's the same thing that I say about Power BI. It's like before you can learn, you got to unlearn some stuff. For example, in Power BI, I came from Excel, and all I would do was flatten the heck out of the table, right? We look up, there's like a giant 100 column table. And if you keep doing that in Power BI, you're not going to get anywhere. And in a way, leaving the 9 to 5 has been more about leaving the 9 to 5 mindset and just busting some of these things. So I think about the same thing. I think why this obsession with growth. I mean, think about it, right? If a company, any company, let's say they made 100 million in a year, right? What's going to be their goal for next year? It's always going to be higher. And I think again, right? I mean, if if I leave the 9 to 5 behind, but I'm still bound to the same dogma, then I'm not really living a life of freedom. And I've questioned that. There's nothing wrong with growing, but growth for growth's sake is questionable. So what you were saying though, it reminded me of one quote, and I looked it up because I didn't want to mess it up. I'm just gonna read it out. To the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world. And man, so of course, I've seen you kind of do that. And I think that's really important. I think that's really important. So it's not about like, oh, yeah, we help millions of people. Well, great. That was your purpose. That was a mission. Then you served it, right? But it's equally meaningful, I think, to just hold one person's hand, help them. And you've helped so many. Man, it's you've already lived an incredible life, but I know there's a lot more exciting stuff to come. Not only kids, I think all of us are proud of you, and you set an example, inspiring example for so many of us. And of course, what I love about you is that you do share your story. You talked about your upcoming TEDx talk, and I know even in local community and other groups you share your story. So that's pretty incredible. So in closing, what I wanted to ask you was that what would you say to that old Charles who was so imagine somebody who's in their 9 to 5, and I think that sometimes the challenge is that it's not bad, it doesn't suck. In fact, in a way, you're grateful. It gives you a livelihood, gives you an income, it supports your family, and the work is sometimes okay, right? And yeah, so things are okay, but there is something greater that's you feel pulled towards, but you're almost afraid of that. And you're almost guilty of that. You feel like, oh no, man, I'm like, yeah, I mean, you feel like you're being thankless, ungrateful for what you already have. And yeah, the risk of stepping beyond to reach for the great just seems too much. What would you say to that person?
And I think, yeah, and this is a message for, our audience too, is, I think there was this part of me that held my true self back. And I think this is what you said about telling your story too, is I was really struggling with, telling my story to the world and telling about what I've done, taking this journey and stuff. But it was about 6 months ago I started telling my journey and telling, about these impacts and about how my life has changed and how I've grown. And and now I enjoy telling these stories because
Mm.
usually afterwards, right, somebody will come out, it's like, you've truly inspired me, you've shown me what's possible, and to take that leap and face my fears and try something new, right? So I think thinking back, um I was so scared of taking
Mhm.
that step into the unknown, right, that without this safety net. But I think now that I look back, I wish I had told that person, don't be so scared, be yourself. and go out there and tell your story and do something, and inspire others, because that will be so fulfilling. That's where I get a lot of my like needs met now, is just inspiring others and feeling fulfilled in that manner. So
Oh man, you certainly inspired me today, and I'm sure a lot of folks who are going to listen to this. Charles, thank you so much. So, folks, will surely have Charles back because already I took some notes. I'm like, man, we could do a whole episode in that. So, we'll be back for that. Charles, thank you so much for your time today.
thanks,
All right,
Avi.
folks, take care. While we're on.